Can you guys see the stream?
Yes, sir.
Let's go. Oh, damn. Alright, I think we're ready to get started now. Alright, last time we left this off with one arm rigged. Well, not rigged. Well, it is rigged, but it's not parented to the mesh yet. We want the entire armature to be ready before we're gonna be parenting the mesh to it. Otherwise, we're going to have to redo it, parent it again, unparent it, stuff like that. So we want this to be completely final before we are actually going to start parenting our actual Totoro model to it. So we still have one leg to go, and it's going to be pretty much the same story as we did for that arm. All right, so I'm going to go into side view, and I'm going to hide that eye for a second because it's in the way. If you want to hide items, you can just draw a little box around them with box select. If you don't have the box select option right now, you can press W a few times. You will scroll through the select options and just scroll through until you see a little box. And you can select the items that you want to hide, for example, the eyeball, and just press H, and that will hide it in the viewport. That means that it will still be visible in the render as it is right now. So now we can go into side view and we actually see what we're doing. There's no eye in front of it. So we're going to select our armature and we're going to go to pose mode. And I'm going to swap that actually to edit mode because we're first going to be adding some new bones, right? Remember from the arms, we need a pull target to show Blender where the elbow, in this case the knee, has to be pointing at. And we need something that controls the IK chain, so an IK controller. All right, so in the foot we have two bones now, but it's the same story again. We have to think about the first bone that's going to be in the chain of the IK. So if you move your foot, then your toes won't really move with it, but your lower leg and your upper leg are basically going to be they're going to be steering your foot into the right locations, right, with bending and the rotating of the hip. So what we're going to do is we are going to make an IK bone in the heel, right? So right there where the lower leg is connected. So I'm going to extrude that. So press E and X to lock that in the X-axis. This is going to be the IK controller of the leg. We're going to select the knee, press E, X, and extrude that to the left. Remember that this is going to be the way where the knee is going to be pointing, and this is the direction that's going to be bending as well. And then I'm going to select the heel, press Alt-P, and just clear that parent, and select the knee, Alt-P, and clear that parent as well, because they have to be moving freely. So now we're going to be moving this one away from the mesh a little bit, right? So press G and X, and just move that away a little bit. We don't want that to be in the way or anywhere near that joint. Okay, now let's name those parts. Remember, we want to mirror this right side of the mesh, which means we're going to have to add .l to the names. So select the heel, F2, name it heel IK.L. Beautiful. And name this one F2 heel, or sorry, knee IK.L. Just like that. That is looking great. Now we want to set up that IK chain. And we do IK change and constraints of bones of armatures is something we do in pose mode. So let's switch that over to pose mode. And remember, the first bone in the IK chain is going to be where we're going to add that IK chain to as well. All right, so last time we did it through the bone constraint properties, but there is actually a shortcut that you can use as well. And let's see, it is Control-Shift-C, which is, let me enable my shortcuts. 1 second. There we go. Control-Shift-C, that will bring up the constraint tab, and then you can just press I on your keyboard, and that will add an IK chain to the bone you selected. All right, so I think another way to do that is by selecting your target first and then your knee. Or sorry, the target, the IK controller, and then the bone you wanted to apply to, and then press Control-Shift-C and I, and then it should actually apply it to that bone with the IK controller as the actual target already, so you won't have to manually select that. So that is quite a large combination of keys there. So remember, Control-Shift-C will bring up the constraints pop-up, and then with I, you will select the inverse kinematics. That will just save you a little bit of time to go into that tab and adding it later on. Right, so that should already work fine. Let's select our yellow bone. That is the one with the IK controller. We have to still select a pull target. So we are going to set it to the armature. And the bone is going to be the knee ik.l. Alright, let's set the chain length to 2. We only want this to control this bone and the upper leg. So that's going to be 2 bones. So a chain length of 2. So now when we move this, you can see we got that IK chain already set up, right? We can make him kick, jump, whatever we need, we can do it. Now there's just one slight issue that I want to fix. And that is that when you now lift your leg, so if I press G and just move that IK controller, you can see that the foot basically rotates with the leg, right? While that is not really realistic. If you lift your leg, you usually have some tension in your foot, so your foot stays pretty much in the same angle. So I want to disable that rotation of the foot, right? So we can control that manually. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into edit mode. So press tab, will switch you from pose to edit and edit to pose. So in edit mode, we are going to select the first bone of the foot. We're going to hold shift and select the IK controller. Hit Control P, and we're going to make this a parent of keep offset, right? So this bone is now parented to the IK controller. And now we're going to go to pose mode. And we are now going to select that first bone in the foot. And we're going to add a bone constraint. And it's going to be a copy location. Okay, so basically what this does is it makes sure that this bone right here and the IK controller are linked. And with this controller right here with the copy location, we want that to be matched to the IK chain bone. The first bone in the IK chain. Because if we now move this too far, you see it's disconnecting from the foot, which means that your mesh will also be stretching out until that point. That's not something we want. We want the maximum position to be at the bottom of that lower leg. All right, so that's why we're adding that copy location bone to the foot. And we have to set the target to the armature first, and then the bone is going to be the lower leg, of course, but because that's what it is attached to. Lower leg.l. Now it will move up to the knee because your bone has a top and a bottom, a head and a tail pretty much, which means that right now it's going to be connected to the head of the bone, but we want it to be on the other side, right? So we can just swap that all the way to the right to 1, and then it will be connected to the other side of the bone, which means that now our foot will not be moved past that connection point, but it will keep its nice rotation, right? You will be able to manually rotate it now. Beautiful. All right, that's pretty much it for the bones that we need to add. And we can still try to do one more thing. Right now, our spine has to be controlled manually. Right, you can see that we have to manually rotate every bone. And it can get quite annoying, so we can also add an IK chain for that if we want. First thing we have to do, though, is parent our legs to our spine. Otherwise, when we're going to move our spine away, our leg is going to stay in place. That's not how bodies are supposed to be. So we're going to go to edit mode, select that hip bone, that upper leg bone, hold shift and control and select that tailbone right there, so the pelvis bone. Control P. And let's set that as keep offset. So now when we go to pose mode, you can see that if I move my my pelvis, it's actually gonna be attached to the leg, right? And when we move our pelvis down, you can see that nicely in side view. It's also going to bend the knees, right? So you can make it duck, what's it called? Like bending down. You can make it jump, and the legs will follow, right? This already looking like a nice jumping motion. Beautiful. All right, same thing for the head. We want some kind of an IK chain there, and this is going to be trial and error a little bit to see how many bones we actually want to be controlling that IK chain. So what we can do is go to pose mode, edit mode, and we want one extra bone there at the top. So I'm just going to extrude that straight up there, EZ. I'm going to click it, press F2. I'm going to rename that to head IK. And you don't have to enter .l there because it's a bone that is in the center of our mesh. And we're actually not even gonna add a pull target for now. Okay, because our spine already has a nice bend in there, and spines can bend 2 ways anyway. Alright, it's not like your elbow that it will snap if you bend it the wrong way. Your spine can actually be very flexible, which is perfect. So now we're going to go to pose mode. We're going to select the first bone in that chain. We're going to press Ctrl Shift C and I, and we're going to select the target to be armature and the bone to be the head IK. There we go. Now you can see the chain length is set at 0, which means that's going to be going all the way to the last bone in the chain, which in this case is the pelvis. And I think we're going to make it go until the bone above the pelvis, because I don't want this entire chain to be connected to the head, I guess. So I'm just going to set this to, I guess it's 4. 4. And let's see what happens now. If we move this around, nothing really happens, and that's because we have to de-attach that bone in edit mode. So select your bone in edit mode, Alt P, clear parent, that should do the trick. Now we can move it around. I can see that we actually get some nice bending going in that spine there, right? Beautiful. So you can see that it only bends one way now. It won't really bend in the right direction on the right. So that is where you would, for example, add a pole target. That would help that out. But for now, actually, I don't really want Totoro to bend backwards too much. So I think this will be fine for the start. We can always add a pole target later. Remember that we only want the bones that are going to be parented to the mesh to be final right now. But bones like the pole targets, they won't actually be influencing the placement of the mesh itself, right? They will not be deforming the mesh. They will only be driving the armature, right? So that means that if we are in selection mode, in edit mode, and we go to that bone tab, then we also have to disable the deform there, because this bone is not going to be deforming the mesh. It is just going to be controlling it. So deform that, and we're actually going to select each and every bone that is not going to be deforming the mesh. So let's select that pole target. Let's also select the hand IK, so hold shift and select that, the head IK as well, the knee IK, and the heel IK there as well, right? So those are all the bones that should not be deforming the mesh. And then I'm going to uncheck deform. I'm going to press right mouse, and I'm going to select copy to selected, which basically means that it's going to copy that unchecking of the deform to all of those selected bones, which means you don't have to do it manually. All right, that's beautiful. Now we can actually start parenting. So how do we, first of all, symmetrize this bone structure? We only have it on one side. And the thing you have to know about doing this in doing it with symmetry is that it will only symmetrize your bones in the x-axis. Right? So that means that we are now working in the wrong axis. Because remember the green line is the y-axis, the red one is the x. So if we now select the entire right side of our Totoro with the box select, and if I now go to armature, symmetrize, it's going to be making it symmetric in the x-axis anyway, which means that it's not going to be looking good. Okay, so we have to rotate this all around without actually rotating it in object mode. Okay, if you're going to be rotating in object mode, then we're still going to have some issues in the future. So let's go to edit mode first, press tab, press A, and I'm actually going to rotate this around the 3D cursor. And it doesn't really matter what your pivot point is, as long as it matches the rotation point of your Totoro as well. All right, so they have to rotate the exact same amount. Otherwise, there are going to be some displacement issues. All right, so I'm going to set my pivot point to the 3D cursor, and I'm going to press RZ90. Okay, go auto object mode. I'm going to select Totoro, press tab, press A, RZ90. And actually, let's press tab first. We may have to first check out our modifiers. No, that's actually fine. All right, Totoro can be rotated in object mode, RZ90. It is just the bone setup that needs to be rotated in edit mode. All right, so right now we should be good to go. If we go to edit mode, select our right side of the mesh with that box select and go to armature, symmetrize, you can now see that the bones will appear on the left side there as well. Okay, so now we actually have an armature structure that matches Totoro. All right, it matches the body. All right, so we're making this with the exception of the ears. If you want to include your ears, you can just add one bone, for example, on each side. And let's just do that real quick. So we can select, for example, this bone, press Shift D, move that to where the ear starts. And let's go to side view. Let's go to object and hide this for a second. Let's go to our armature again, press tab. And I want to first clear the parent of that bone. So Alt P, clear parent. I'm going to select that top part. And I'm just going to move it to the tip of my ear, right there. And I'm going to move this part to the bottom of the ear. So where it starts a little bit, probably about there. Move this one to the right a little bit. Right, so this is pretty much the ear shape. Now we can select that bone, right mouse, and we can just subdivide that a few times. Right, perhaps 2 times. This is plenty. Remember, we don't have a lot of geometry on those ears right now anyway, so it won't be controlling it that much. So this is already going to be working. I'm going to select the lower bone, and I'm going to hold Shift, select the head bone, Control P, keep offset. Right, we want this to be parented to the head bone. So if the head rotates, then the ears will follow, of course. All right, now we could just add another IK chain to that ear if we want. But I'm just gonna be controlling this manually, I think, because that's also how we can portray more emotion through Totoro if we actually are going to be able to customly rotate every part of that ear. All right, so that's just what I'm going to leave it as. So let's rename the bottom part as ear lower.l. This one to ear middle.l. And this one ear top.l. It doesn't really matter as long as if you add .l. Select your bones, armature, symmetrize. There we go. Now let's go to object mode. And let's go to pose mode actually for a second. Seems like we have some weird kind of rotation going on in those bottom bones. That is because we actually duplicated a bone that has an IK chain on it, which is stupid on my end. So let's select those bones and just remove those IK controllers. And remove it on this side as well. There we go. That is just a little issue that I just encountered. All right, so let's go to object mode. Let's select our Totoro. Let's select our armature while holding Shift. Hit Control P. And now we get these options to link it or parent it to some armatures. Right, so you have armature deform, which is the basic one. We have with empty groups, with envelope weights, and with automatic weights. And each of those will give you a different results. But the one we're going to be using the most is automatic weights, which means that it's going to be automatically assigning parts of the mesh that belong to a bone, right? Which means that it's going to be trying to think of what parts of your mesh will have to be parented to a bone. For example, this part of the mesh will be parented to the bone of the lower arm. It's going to try to do that automatically. And most of the times, it actually works surprisingly well. So let's try it. Control P with automatic weights. And you can see some of the mesh actually moved. Not entirely sure why that happened. Let's check it out. Let's check it all out a little bit. All right, so if there is an issue with your weight painting, there is a high chance that it has to do with your normals of your mesh. So I'm first going to try to change that. Control Z a few times. There we go. Now I'm just going to select my Totoro. I'm going to press Tab A. I'm going to select 3 on my keyboard, and I'm going to press Shift N, just to change those normals in case that is that's not working. So I'm going to go back to object mode. Now I'm going to apply my rotation to Totoro as well. So press Control A and just apply all transforms. Now I'm going to set right mouse, set origin to 3D cursor. That is fine. Let us try to parent this again. So I'm going to hold Shift, select my armature. I'm going to hit Control P with automatic weights. All right, so it's still not working properly. That is quite annoying. So I'm going to go on a little of an error fixing streaks. I'm going to select my Totoro. And I'm going to go to the object data properties. All right, so first things first, those vertex groups are what Blender tried to pretty much parent your mesh with. Right, so for example, if I select my Totoro and go to weight paint, then I can select a random bone, for example, the pelvis, and I can see which parts of the mesh are actually weight painted to be matched with that bone. All right, so let's see where that issue actually lies. So I'm feeling that some part is parented wrong. I'm gonna go to object mode, and I'm just gonna try the easiest way to fix this is to go to modifiers and just swap my armature with the subdivision modifier. All right, because that is probably the cleanest way to try and go about that. That's already looking a little bit better, at least. So let's select our armature and go to pose mode. I'm gonna hit A, pose, clear transform, and I'm just gonna hit all in case there's a small issue there. And actually, I'm not really sure why this is happening. Let's see. Let's see what happens. I don't want to spend too much time trying to fix this error. Okay, that's not looking great. All right, what I'm gonna do is remove those modifiers, and I will actually continue with something else first. Figure this out while we're not recording, and then I will let you know. Otherwise, it's gonna be too long of an error fixing situation, and I don't want that to happen. All right, I will get back to you as soon as possible with that. So I'm gonna select my Totoro first, and we're actually now gonna make some of the details instead. Right? If something doesn't work, just look at it later. Try to fix it. So I'm gonna select Totoro, and we wanna make some nails now. All right. So what we're gonna do is try to work with the geometry that we have. Okay, I think Totoro has four of those fingers, four of those nails. So I'm going to select some mesh parts, and those are going to be, let's see, those three. So we're going to be adding 4 fingers. That's going to be 3 fingers and a thumb. All right, so I think those 3 parts of the mesh will be fine to create fingers. And I think I want this one there to be the actual thumb. Okay, so I'm going to select the fingers first. I'm going to press I and I again. So we have all of those faces individually right there. And I'm going to press G and X. And I'm just going to move this to the side a little bit like that. And then I'm going to press I to inset those ones again, like that. And then I'm going to press E and just extrude that to the right a little bit so we can get some kind of a indentation for those nails to start in. So that's looking fine. If you think this bending, this bevel is too strong, you can press 2 and just double click them, for example, like that. And you can set your pivot points back to individual origins because we want those edges to scale around their own origin now. And then we can just press S to just scale them down a little bit, like that. You can see that that makes the roundings we have there, the bevels, it's going to make it a little bit smoother, which is just looking a little bit better in my opinion. All right, so that's going to be like the starting points of the nails. Now for the thumb, we can just select this face, press I to inset that, move it out a little bit, right there. Press I to inset once again. And now just extrude that inwards a little bit, like that. Maybe a little bit more, so press G and just move that inwards a little bit. Like that. That's looking fine, actually. So those are going to be 3 fingers and actually a thumb. I'm not sure if Totoro actually has like opposable thumbs. But I feel like in 3D it is nice to have it because you want it to be able to grab certain objects as well, which is going to be hard if you actually have a hand that can't grab things, right? So that's why I'm just gonna add that, even though maybe Totoro in 2D doesn't have it. All right, so how do we make those nails? Well, it's actually gonna be quite easy because we already have the geometry that we need for the shape, right? And they are hidden in here. We can't see it now, but if we disable the subdivision modifier, those are the faces that are gonna be used for nails as well. So I'm gonna select those, hit Shift D, Escape, P, and separate that selection. So those are now separate objects, which means that our nails are now something we actually have as a different object. All right, so let's press Tab to go to Edit mode, press A, press E, and X. I just want those to be going into the X direction Something like that. Not sure how long exactly they have to be. I think that's fine. All right, and then we can just press S and just scale those down a little bit. And we have individual origins selected, which is what we need now as well. So they scale in their own origins. Now I'm gonna press Ctrl R right away to add some of these edge loops. Remember, we have a subdivision modifier. So if I enable this, you can see that there are gonna be very strong roundings in the starting points of the nails as well. While I just want them to be connected in the mesh. All right, so that's why I'm adding some edge loops and moving that all the way to the right, just like that. Ctrl R and just swipe them to the right. Beautiful. Now let's re-enable that subdivision modifier on Totoro. There we go. So now we actually have some nails that parent nicely to the mesh. All right, we can do the same thing for the thumb. What I'm going to do is press 3 on my keyboard to go into face select. And I'm going to double click on this edge loop and this edge loop. And we're going to hold shift and I'm going to select the inner face there as well. You can see the selection, but it is now selected. And what I'm going to do is move it out a little bit more. And I'm going to press R. And from my camera top view a little bit, I'm going to rotate this slightly to the side. Like that. Reason why is because I still want the thumb to go kind of in the same direction as the rest of the nails. Instead of going completely off to the side. That's going to look weird, I think. So this is fine. I'm going to select that interface, Shift D, Escape, P, Selection. All right. Now press Tab and just select that inner nail that we just separated. Press Tab, A, E, just like that. And I'm going to scale this down. Ctrl R, add an edge loop that goes right there. Beautiful. All right. Now I'm going to select my parent mesh, my Totoro. Press Tab and this inner edge loop, I'm going to double click that and scale it in a little bit more just to make it more connected to that nail. And I think that's already looking better. Right, this actually looks like Totoro can at least grab something in between of those nails, in between of those fingers. And whether that's going to be like a tennis ball or something different, it doesn't really matter. But that's actually looking quite all right. So how do we get that to the other side as well? Well, that's quite easy. We already mirrored our stuff plenty of times. So we're just going to go into edit mode, press 1, let's press Alt Z to enable X-ray mode, and I'm going to select the right side of the mesh up until that center. And let's see, zoom in if we have everything selected that we need. Yeah, delete vertexes and this as well, the top of the ear. There we go. And we may have deleted too many of those. Let me see. Nah, that should be it. Delete those. All right. Then let's add a mirror modifier. And swipe that in front of the subdivision, as we used to do. And now we at least have those finger holes. And we can now do the same mirroring for those nails. All right, so I'm going to add a new modifier. Mirror. And there we go. That are the fingers. Now for the thumb, we're going to do the same. Add modify mirror. There we go. So that is that part of the mesh, mirrored at least. Now while we're at the details anyway, let's just move our eyeball closer to the mesh. So where is that? Let's re-enable it. There we go. Our eyeball looking smooth. And let's just parent our controller. So remember, this is a shape key controller. If you move this down, it's going to change the shape of the pupil. We can just parent this inner circle by holding shift and selecting that outer one. Control P, set parent to object. So now we can just move this around without changing the pupil. And I'm going to parent this part to, well, let's say we're going to be parenting that to Totoro later on. I'm not going to parent that to the eyeball because then it's just going to disappear in the face. So we're going to select my iris, hold shift and select my eyeball, Control P, parent to object. So now I can just move my eyeball around and the iris moves with it. That's looking good. So now I'm just going to zoom into Totoro. I'm going to select my 3D cursor and I'm going to set that right in the inner part of the eye socket, right in the center there. And reason why is because I want an easy way to get my eyeball into position of the eye socket. So I'm gonna now just select my eyeball, Shift S, and just move the selection to the cursor, and there it is. It is quite big for the head, not gonna lie. So we're gonna press S and just scale it down a little bit, right there, to about the right size. And now we have to rotate this, of course. I'm gonna press R, Z, and we're gonna have to select minus 90. No, 90. Minus 90. Minus 90, it was correct. Minus 90. And let's just try to move this at the right spot. Okay, so we have to try to place that right around the eye socket. Scale it down a little bit. And let's move this a little bit to the outside parts, a little bit down as well. Just so we have it lying nicely in that eye socket. Something like that. Let's go to render view and see how that looks. If it actually looks like our Totoro has a nice eyeball. Yeah, that looks quite nice. Alright, I'm gonna re-enable my empty plane. I'm gonna select it, RZ90, and I'm just gonna move that to the side. Alright, just like that. So Totoro, I think we matched those eyes quite well actually. I like the way they look. Alright, so let's select our circle. That's the wrong circle, we need the eyeball circle, which is this sclera. And let's press right mouse on that and select hierarchy. That means that you're going to select every object that is parented to it as well. That is what select hierarchy does. Now I can press Shift D. Shift D, that will duplicate the eyeball. And I can just escape that movement and press S and X and -1. And then press G and X. And we can just move that to the other side. Right, manually, it doesn't really require mirroring or anything. It's just as easy as that. Beautiful. Now we have a Totoro with eyes and nails as well, which is looking quite alright. Nice. How long are we going right now? We're going for about half an hour. So I'm going to be ending the tutorial right there, and I will be coming back for that armature, that weird bug. I've actually never had that before, so that's going to be fun. A fun thing to get back into. And it is probably to do with some part of the geometry that's not working right, but we'll fix that. Alright, in the meanwhile, are there any questions?
It's a very nice eyeball.
It is, isn't it? Yeah. I don't know. I just like the look. Usually when I position the eyeball, I just try to do it by feeling. I mean, if I want this to be perfect, then I will have to change the Totoro mesh a little bit more, because the eyes are the eye sockets are not completely directed to the front, right? They're a little bit on the sides, which means that if I rotate my eyeball to be perfect in line with that, it's gonna look more like the eye of a horse, right? They're gonna be off to the side, which is gonna
Yeah,
look
Totoro is gonna look like he has Down syndrome if you do that.
exactly. So that's gonna make Totoro look like an actual horse with eyes that are not working properly. So that's why I'm doing it a little bit more like it is in this scenario. So if you want it to be completely visible, you can just go into sculpt mode on Totoro and just move this right part to the inside a little bit more, like that. So we're just going to manually tweak our eyeball to be completely visible, if that is what you prefer. Right, but that's personal preference, I guess. I'm going to Control Z it because I actually liked it being a little bit overlapped by the eye socket. Oh yeah, I wasn't expecting anything else, man.
As long as you have the big booty cheeks, that's okay, Mempo.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, I forgot about that. He has a tail. Well, maybe we'll add that later. I'm just gonna check real quick if my armature issue is because of those shape keys. It is not. Well, that's some weird stuff. I'll definitely fix that and let you know what the issue was. Yeah. No, it may be a very easy fix. Just have to find it first. Seems like some part of the mesh is getting parented to the wrong part of the geometry, which is not something that, well, it just happens in Blender, I guess. But I'll definitely fix that and let you all know why this reverse chicken is happening. It actually looks like it.
It does. Once you said that, I can't unsee it now.
Maybe maybe an issue with some of the rotations, actually. The rotation of those bones. Turkey legs, what do you mean? I can't help it, it's the shape of Totoro.
I was gonna say next week, Nino, we should have you show off the shader ball because it should be pretty good to go at that point.
Ooh. Oh yeah, I can definitely do that. That's gonna be fun.
Heck yeah. Yeah, we're talking about the shader ball more in the Twitter space tomorrow. But yeah, Bo Vader's been working very hard at it, and it has me super excited about everything that we can do within Blender.
Hell yeah. I actually may have found the issue. Let's see. Let's see real quick. Yeah, Vader. The shader ball is looking crisp. Aha! Yeah, that's at least looking better. Alright, so very quick, the issue was the pull target, which is something we did fix for the arms, but we didn't do for the legs. So it was at 0, which means that the pull target, the leg, is actually going to bend outwards, right? If I move this up, you can see that the knee is pointing in the wrong direction, which means that we have to change the pull target, the pull angle of the IK bone, until it matches the actual direction of the pull target. All right, so that's going to be 90 degrees. So that is why we had that weird parenting issue that didn't work. Now that it does work, we also have to go to Totoro and the modifier tab and actually set that armature to be before the subdivision modifier. Otherwise, we're going to get that. Right now, you see some weird shader issues. If we swipe this above, that's going to be fixed right there. So now if you go and select our armature, and we have move our body, you can see that we actually are moving Totoro. Right, his belly is moving in and out a little bit, and that is because it is quite some distance away from that bone structure. So we may do some small tweaking on that in the next tutorial to just make it work a little bit better. But for right now, we can move Totoro, we can move the legs, we can move the arms, make him punch. And this is, for example, if I move this inwards, you can see that part of the cheek, part of the chest is moving with it. And that is something that the parenting with automatic weights just does. So that requires manual tweaking, which is annoying, but it's part of rigging. It's part of animating. The annoying parts have to come with it as well. So we will have to be tweaking that a little bit next time as well. Okay, so if you forgot how I parented the actual Totoro to those bones, just select your Totoro, hold Shift, select your bones, Control P, and parent with automatic weights. And if you have that weird reversed chicken issue, make sure you go to pose mode and select your IK legs and just tweak that pull angle until it looks good. Alright, that's going to be it for that tutorial. Play with them. Yes, sir. Let's see how this works. All right, so the spine's working nice. Yeah, so if you want to do that, I can show that real quick. We're not gonna be parenting the eyes to with automatic weights. We're not gonna do that the same way. What we're gonna do instead is actually selecting the eyeball, holding Shift, selecting the armature, pressing Tab, and we're gonna select the bone that we want to parent it to, which is going to be this head bone. Right? It's only going to be this top bone. Now go out of edit mode, Control P, and we're gonna set the parent to just the bone now. All right, do the same thing for the other eye. Hold Shift, press Tab, select the bone, Control P, bone. Now for the nails, we can do the same thing very quickly. Select all of those nails and hold Shift, just hold Shift, selected armature, Tab, selected hand, go out of it, Control P, and set the parent to the bone. Left side as well. Or actually, those are mirrored, so that is probably going to be an issue. We have to first apply that mirror. Alright, if you're working with mirrors and bones, then it is always good to apply that mirror. First, let's get rid of those shape keys, because we don't want the shape keys in those nails. And then we can just apply that mirror modifier. There we go. Press Tab, A, and let's press P and separate by loose parts. There we go. So now all of these parts are going to be separate parts, and we want those left or the right sides of the hand. Those four. All right, we also have to apply the mirror in the thumbs real quick. So remove those shape keys before you apply the mirror, and then swipe it in front of the subdivision and press Ctrl A. There we go. Press Tab, A, P, and separate by loose parts. There we go. And let's just now parent them the way we just did. Right, select all of those nails on the one hand, hold Shift, and select your armature, press Tab, and we're going to be parenting to, the inner hand. Right, we've got this one, which is going to be the IK controller, but there's a hand bone hidden behind it. So just make sure to double click on that bone, and then it will select the one behind. Then press Tab, Ctrl P, parent to bone. And let's just do that for the other side now as well. Right, select it, hold Shift, armature, Tab, double click to select that hand bone. Press Tab, Ctrl P, and set parent to bone. Now I forgot the thumb, so I'm going to do that as well real quick. Same way we did it just now. Ctrl P, bone. Alright, so now it should all be parented the way we need it. If I go to pose mode, move this face, you can see that it is parented. The eyes don't match the head just yet, which is once again an issue of the automatic weight parenting we did for Totoro on the bones. So that's also something we will be fixing in the next tutorial. All right, but now at least the hands and stuff, the nails are going to be moving very smoothly with the hands, so we can stab people if we want. And so that is something that we have set up just now. And in the next tutorial, we'll be tweaking that until it is to our liking. All right, any more questions? Yes, you can, for sure. I deleted my shape keys by accident to fix those issues, but if you still have yours, then you can definitely play around with it. Yeah, exactly. No problem. Anything else? Nothing else, I see. All right, then. I will be giving you some side quests this week. There are some fun things going on. So be prepared. And then next week we will also be showcasing the shader ball a little bit. And tomorrow we've got the space going on, so I'll see you guys there. All right, then have a good day, and until the next one.
Thank you, Nino.